is never going to be a customer situation, right? They would never use these 4 products together and then something happens with one of the products. That's probably never a situation that's going to happen. Now, if it comes from a customer, you're never going to say that. You are going to take good cognizance of the fact that this is a defect that has to be fixed, or probably an issue to be fixed. Okay, so this is briefly IBM's DevOps point of view. You have these 4 pillars: the plan and measure, the develop and test, the release and deploy, and then the monitor and optimize. And we'll come to this where I'm talking about who takes care of each of these 4 pillars, right? There are very specific roles for each of these pillars, very specific people who would do each of these. Now you might say, in a small organization, for instance, if I had to do all of this, there'd probably be one person doing plan and measure and develop and test, right? And that's okay. But as long as the person knows when he's wearing the hat of the plan and measure and when he's wearing the hat of the develop and test, right? When those 2 things mix and you don't know when you're doing what, that's when it becomes a problem. So you just need to understand that well. And you see at all parts in this cycle, on the 4 pillars, you have continuous, which is a key word, right? You're continuously doing things. So if it's planning and measure, you're continuously planning. Your product manager is actually looking at the market every single minute of his job, right? He can't go start that process after you release your product. He has to be watchful of what the market is like. He has to ensure that when it goes out to market, he's also seeing the feedback there.
So are we saying that all these activities should happen within a single sprint cycle?
So the continuous monitoring, the monitor and optimize is actually an outward activity. It is the customer. And if you're having betas or demos or client demos where they're actually doing that, then yes, you have to have that entire cycle going. So your product manager has to be tuned into your design partners who are doing that sprint testing on their end system. So you will have to incorporate it. So like I said, because there are specific individuals tasked with each of these roles, it becomes easy when that is split. You're not having one person, not the developer doing everything, right? Going and monitoring what the customer is saying and then saying, okay, so how should this feedback be incorporated, then going coding, then testing it out. He's not doing it all himself. So you have various people doing their different tasks and then it becomes simple. I won't say simple, it becomes, more trackable, more, you have boundaries of where you can stop your involvement. Okay, so with the lean approach, right? So you've used lean in this entire process. So what does it mean? If you have an idea, great. You don't want to go through, the product management route where the product manager is telling you what to do and you want to do it. You just think this would make great business sense. Good. So you get the idea. You get it into production fast, right? Make a quick prototype. Make a quick proof of concept of it. Throw it out at the customer, right? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. And then ask him. It could be so. There's this concept of the minimum viable product, right? What is the least that you can do that you can show to someone to show value? So go that route. That's where lean comes in, right? So throw your minimum viable product out to a bunch of customers, get feedback, ask them, is this what they're looking for? If not, then go back, right? Go back to your drawing table, fix whatever was the issue there. And if the idea doesn't work, if 9.5 out of 10 people are saying, this is not what we're interested in, just shelf it, go on to something else, right? So that's there. Get ideas into production fast, get people to use it and get feedback and use the feedback. I think that part's missing there, right? Getting feedback is great. So someone said, we do it once in a year, we go out to customers, maybe you have a voice event where everyone is jumping at you with all their escalations and DMRs. That's not enough. So use the feedback that the customer gives you and then results are better. So what we're saying here is risk and cost comes down, speed and quality goes up as a result. Yeah? That's a takeaway from this. So in order to enable DevOps, there are some foundational pillars, right? So we talked about plan and measure, the develop and test, the release and deploy, and at the end of all that you have a monitor and optimize that's constantly reviewing this. Is it going well? What is going well? What is not going well? Do we have to change the process? There is no standard process like we know, right? What works well for your team is what is best for you. So constantly monitor, optimize. You have what is called the JAS platform that IBM has that gives you the OSLC capability in order to keep doing this. So we have this product that that can tie in all the stakeholders, right from your product manager, your architects, your developers, your testers, except for the customers. So even your support can tie into this entire thing. They know what are the requirements that are going into a particular thing, which stories are taking care of those requirements, what are the specific change sets that have gone into making this requirement a reality, what were the test cases executed on this thing, with those test cases associated with defects, which of those defects were resolved and taken back, which of them were taken exceptions and you said you'll take care of them later. So that forms your backlog. So this entire thing, everyone knows what's happening where. So Jazz platform gives you that OSLC capability, it gives you constant monitoring and optimizing as well.
So is that just an application lifecycle management?
Yes, pretty much, yes.
How
It's
is
a
that connected with DevOps?
Okay, so what happens is the agile that you're talking about, right, where you're bringing all your stakeholders together, it starts with that. And then when this ties into a system that can deploy your builds, run your builds first, then deploy your builds on a build-ready system, that is where the DevOps will come. This is, of course, just the agile part of it. You have plugins from this into other OSLC-based platforms that can get you machines, you can deploy it, run your automated tests on those deployment machines and so on. Right. Okay. So,
sorry, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Apologies.
Yeah.
So how does that
Now there are plugins that go in, so we have separate point products.
Visa?
It can't plug in with Visa, but it can plug in with RTVS or what was formerly called Green Hat, which is our virtualization
Or
solution.
Jenkins, can it plug in with Jenkins?
It can plug in with Jenkins, yes. So ALM, so Jazz actually has a backend source code management system of its own, a defect management system of its own. But if your Jenkins or any of your other products have OSLC like behavior where you can write APIs to plug into this, then it can integrate seamlessly.
See, Jenkins is more on a continuous integration, right?
Pillars, and who are the owners of those 4 pillars here, right? Pillars, right? So you have a plan and measure which is taken care of by the business owner. So the business owner could be your VP, it could be your GM, it could be even the product manager for all you care, right? He's the most important thing. When you're talking about developing and testing, of course, the developers and testers in your organization. For the release and deployment, it is your ops. So the ops sometimes don't like to be called part of the testing and development organization. Actually, their core job is just that, right? They are actually using code, so they are developers of some sort, and then they're testing on a platform by deploying on it. So I remember early on, there used to be this ops team in the organization that I was working for, and no one would go talk to anyone in the ops team, right? I mean, they were sacrosanct. They were doing the most important job. They were deploying the product on a production server, and they would be the most serious guys around, and you don't mess with them. So what we're trying to do here is we're saying, that there's nothing sacrosanct about it, really. I mean, why is it important? It's important because the customer is using it. So why can't we do something like that with every developer? Very much like what he said, where you have that environment available for everyone to test on, for everyone to use. When you're developing, you know exactly what you are developing against or what you're developing with, what are those systems. So the service operations there, and then monitor and optimize targets the customer, right? So we start from an idea, like we said, and we go to market with it. So this entire process is those 3 things. Have an idea, get it out fast to the market, get feedback, and work on the feedback. So this is all of these, and the lean and agile principles actually tie it all together in order to make sure that everyone in the entire chain is well. Okay, so now there are different adoption paths, and there are some capabilities that you require in each of these. And I think we already spoke about this, right? So in the plan and measure, you know that your product manager is looking for requirements. He's looking for what parts of the code should do what. So that's in the plan and measure. You have the coding and testing of. You have the deployment and the provisioning of your build-ready your deployment-ready systems. And then the monitoring is being done on a constant basis, and you're getting customer feedback. So all this is enabled through the Jazz and the open standards platform. Okay, and you have at the base of it, you have collaboration going from the ALM solution that we have. You have the chain and configuration management that's tied into it, and you have dashboards and analytics that actually give you feedback. So there's this very interesting beta right now. It's called MQA from IBM. So what it does is typically the last part, right? Dashboard analytics, and this is for mobile apps. So if you have a mobile app there and you want to know what the sentiment of your app, how many people are saying good things about the app on the App Store, how many people are saying foul things, what are the ratings you're getting, any crashes on your app because of which someone complained. So this actually mines all of that data from the App Store, from different sources, and it gives you a consolidated view of, you know, if 10 people used your app, how many of them rated your app as what, and you go to the app store every day to keep checking it. All you need to do is log into your dashboard and you'll get a report of how it's going. You'll also get a you know, crashes whenever you get the crash dumps into your system automatically if you instrument, and you can figure out what went wrong as well. So the dashboard analytics gives a very powerful feature to the developer really to figure out what was going wrong and how the customer thought it was going. So there is a maturity model, and you know, there are different levels in each of these pillars that an organization could potentially achieve. So you start off with something that you practice, then you make it repeatable, and when you're making it repeatable, you will find out there are a bunch of issues that you have there. So how do you then make it reliable? And once you've done it reliably, can you scale it across multiple projects, multiple teams, make it organization-wide? So how scalable is that? And if you look at the ones that are highlighted in red, even today, many organizations are still at this level. Okay, and this is across different industries. It's not specific to the IT industry. It's across multiple industries. So that is the industry norm at this point, and this is based on a survey that was done by Gartner in 2013. So again, so just to, you know, summarize the whole thing, if you want to get started with DevOps, where do you start? You don't start big, you start small. You figure out the most critical projects that make a difference to you, right? Which are the ones that customers are asking for? Which are the ones that are going to make the most important, the most difference to a customer? Pick that. Then what do? You make sure you get a consensus among all your stakeholders, which is part of the agile. Then what do? You go through your assessment model, figure out where you are on each of the processes. Are you doing everything that it takes to get you to the maturity model where you can repeat it again and again and then make it scalable over your entire organization? And finally, as you move on, keep improvising, right? Talk about what went wrong, figure out how that could be made better, and pick one item at a time. See, a lot of times what happens is you have a team that's trying to go the DevOps way, and at the end of one sprint, they realize that there are 6-7 things that went wrong. And they have action points for every one of those 6-7 things to fix. And when you're trying to fix too many things, you actually fix nothing. So pick that one thing that makes most of the difference. If it's something that's early on in the chain, it's easier to fix. So pick that up, fix that in the next sprint. And sprint after that, go to the next problem. So that's the way you keep refining your process and make sure that you make a success of that. Okay, so this is an example of what we did in one of our teams in IBM Rational. So this is with the CLM team. So what the CLM team earlier was doing in about 2010 when it actually started long releases, right? You would develop and develop and develop and test, and then finally it would come out in the market and you don't even know what would happen after that. So you have 40 developers, 50 developers, 20 testers, and all that manual effort or whatever effort was being put in, at the end of the year, you don't know what the risk is based on that. So this team adopted continuous integration, continuous delivery, and they do continuous deployment as well. And so these are the type of numbers that we're talking about. So the overall time to development went from 120 days to 3 days in a span of 4 years, right? And that's a difference of 117 days. If you look at the total deployment time, it went from 2 days to 4 hours. If you look at the time to production, it went from 9 days to 2 days. So ultimately, the entire thing was a betterment of 9 months. So, mind you, I'm not talking about the volume of work here. So it's impossible to do what you do in 12 months in 3 months, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how much time does it take to get to the customer to figure out if what you are doing is right or not, and then improvise on it. Because when you're doing 12-month schedules, you don't know. You're outdated before you were in the market, right? So to make sure you're not there, you cut it down, make it more often, available more often, tested better, tested earlier, to give you that sort of thing. So the maintenance has gone down on that project by 10%, the innovation has gone up 10%. There's been an increase in the number of patents filed, there's been an increase in the number of new features that have come out in the product. So an interesting thing that they did in that team was they split up their development team into 2 parts. One that's called a run team, that takes care of the normal work, right? So you have a backlog of defects, you have, when you sent out your last release, customers came back with something that they were not happy about. And then you have another team that's doing the features. It's called the feature team, or implementing new stuff. So they separated these two teams out and said, you do defects, you clear the backlog. And it's not like someone who's in one team can't move to another, right? For this sprint, you do this, and then we'll switch. So they adopted that, and that's worked out very well, because of which the maintenance has gone down and the innovation has gone up. Okay, so
If they try to keep within the team, same thing, the composition of the team should be doing the one activity while the rest.
are doing on the feature activities. So we've also tried the other way, where we were doing both feature work as well as, you know, normal defect work and customer related defects coming in. And you realize at some point it's like your RAM, right? The more context switching you're doing, the less effective you get.
So then it's the same people who have the context of what is being built.
Right. So what happens is, when you are doing one particular feature, it's only the feature team that's involved in that feature. Now through the sprint demos at the end, they actually socialize this with everyone. And another important point I'd like to bring in here is, you're not just doing sprint demos for you know, your final stakeholders. So you're doing sprint demos to everyone, including your documentation teams, right? To show them how you're using the product, what would make best sense for them to go put out as part of your product documentation. So involving the product documentation has also proved out to be very helpful for us, because they understand how a customer now uses the product, and they're not siloed where they're saying, oh, this is how it should be, and they're perfect English and all of that. That's not the focus.
Wouldn't it be one step better if you actually included the documentation as part of your scrum team?
Yeah, we do that.
And they develop
do
the
that.
document as the features being developed.
That's what we do, but we also give, so what happens is, not all of them are co-located. Okay, so we have one team that's here that works on certain features, and they can't, you know, participate in the scrums always. But you have this one team that's probably supervising this team, that needs to know the high level things in order to make sure the integration documentations and all of that are in place. And that's the team that we call for the sprint demos. Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to end off with IBM's Bluemix, which is our platform as a service solution, and this enables DevOps simply by making it easier for you to deploy on the live environment, right? You go create your services by using existing services. It gives you a soft layer as a platform that gives you your hardware or the infrastructure as a service. You can build hybrid environments, incorporate multiple different solutions. There are some services that are already deployed. For instance, you have MongoDB as one of the services that are available. You have Twilio, which is a push service that's already available. You can go create your services out there. And right now it's free, it's open for all to try, and this brings you more closer to your customers to figure out what is the sort of feedback that you are trying to get at. This absolutely enables that. So
That's hosted, right?
that's hosted, yes. Yeah. So that's about it for this session. If you had any questions, please go ahead. If we don't have time now, we can always chat up later through Twitter or even through mail. I hope you all found this session useful. And, thank you. So I hope you all have a good journey with DevOps.
So thank you, ma'am, for giving such a good presentation. So can we have a round of applause for her?
What is it that you hope to see here?
Yeah, so basically I'm looking, so you just open that Eclipse part, and I know that with the Java Eclipse and how it works very well, because the Java, the IDE support.
I don't come from a technical background, so
Okay.
I've been from project management.
Okay.
So I want to see how
it actually works.
How it actually works.
You can do that. About your question, what can you give me a user story which user story which would give a
Yeah, so
where we actually do a development. But the way I understand in DDD is basically you are putting a small code, then you are compiling it, and then you are running through a test case or something like that.
not exactly, but anyway. But I'm asking for a user story. I want a user story because it all flows from the user story. You understand what a user story is?
So as a system, I would like to collect the financial data and report it to my director, financial director. Could be one of the stories. You're talking about business intelligence system, right?
Yeah, so in a BI, it's like you are pulling the data from a source, then you are putting some transform on it, and then you are presenting a report.
I know what that is. So you're talking about ETL and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Okay. That's okay. But I'm saying, give me a user story. Because what this gentleman gave was a very high level wish.
So what are you looking at? So this is the user story. So we should,
Yeah, I'm listening.
Maybe it is like you pull some specific data, 4 or 5 columns from source. You are doing some transform on it.
The user story is written from the user point of view.
Yeah, we can take a very simple one.
Yeah.
As a call center professional, I want to log in into the service management portal.
I think we'll take an even simpler one. But I was looking for a BI user story because you start talking about the tools and the tools. So do you people need to do any software development?
Yeah, definitely. There are so talent. When I'm saying a talent as a tool, it creates a job basically. So we call it as a talent job, and that job runs and then it pulls the data, do some transform, and put it in a data mart.
So do you have to actually program all this, or the
Yes.
tool does it for you?
I don't need to write a code as such, but I need to pull some what we call it as a kind of flows.
So why do you need test driven algorithm? You don't need it.
why do you say that?